Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for NASCA's National Webinar Series. Got a great group with us today, our partners, our sister associations, who will be sharing their members' priorities for 2022. We're excited that you're here with us today. As you're just coming in, please make sure that you look to your Zoom account, rename yourself, let us know what city or state or company that you're with so that we can see who's on today's call. But take just a moment again to rename yourself and let us know who's on the call. Again, we're excited today to have all of our partner associations here today. You can see all of their smiling faces on the screen. We're also thrilled to have our moderator, Janelle Ford, with us from the state of Illinois. And we're going to jump right in so that we have an opportunity to hear from everyone, hear their state member priorities, and really see that alignment between the National Association of State Chief Administrators and all of our partners that we have on today's call. Let me introduce our speakers and our moderator, and then we'll turn the program over and begin. So today we have Kenny Pointer, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of State Auditors, Comptrollers, and Treasurers. We have Shelby Kearns, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of State Budget Officers. Doug Robinson, he's the Executive Director of the National Association of State Chief Information Officers. Mike Harvey, who's the director of the Iowa Department of Transportation and the former president of the National Association of State Facilities Administrators. Leslie Scott is here with us. She's the executive director of the National Association of State Personnel Executives. And then finally, rounding out today's call is Daniel Kruger, who's the director of strategic partnerships with the National Association of State Procurement Officials. So you all have heard all the acronyms across the board. These are our leading experts here to share with us the 2022 priorities from their members. And as I mentioned, we are so thrilled to have NASCA's Vice President, Director Janelle Ford, from the CMS division at the state of Illinois. So Janelle, let me turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Pam. I am very, very, very excited to be here. First of all, I want to extend greetings from the great state of Illinois. And I want to thank all of you all for joining us. One good thing that came out of the pandemic is that we probably have a handful more folks who are able to join us virtually today than might have otherwise. And so I want to say thank you in advance, and thank you in advance for your good questions that I hope will come. And then my second and third thanks is to NASCA as an organization, to obviously all of our partners, and to Pam and to Tammy for all the work that they've done to help coordinate this. So, as Pam has mentioned, we are going to hear today from our strategic partners, and we're going to learn a lot more about the initiatives and their efforts to align their programs. So each speaker that Pam took the time to introduce will share a bit of an overview, if you will, of their association's top priorities. It's actually one of my favorite things to engage with regards to our speakers and our other partners, to understand kind of what the needs are for their respective organizations. And today we get to hear that in one great space and time. And so for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with NASCA, I do want to just point out that one of our top priorities is engaging with our strategic partners. It's been a longstanding practice of ours, and we're excited to be able to do that here today, especially because we all know as various members of associations how important it is for us to be thoughtful, but also to collaborate and to be strategic as possible as we work towards really radical and strategic change. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to begin with NASCA. I'm probably going to say some of these acronyms incorrectly, so you all will bear with me today. And we're going to talk a little bit more with Kenny around some of the key focus areas for auditors, controllers, and treasurers. And so Kenny, I'm going to introduce you and ask you to kind of talk to us a little bit about what your members have been thinking about as they've been extremely busy with the influx of federal dollars and ensuring accountabilities with these funds. So go ahead and please share a little bit more about your 2022 priorities.
Thank you, Janelle, for that kind introduction. And I just want to thank Pam and members of NASCA for the opportunity to be with you today and present a few of NASAC's priorities for 2022. Janelle, you just nailed it on the head. We've been very busy trying to provide accountability over the COVID relief funds that have been coming to us since March of 2020. And really, as you'll see, that really centers around our top priorities. But again, I just want to thank all of you for being with us today. NASAC members, like all of you, I'm sure, have been very, very busy since the pandemic first started. So let's get started with some of our top priorities. And Tammy, if you could just change to the next slide, please. I mentioned the start of the pandemic. Everybody, I think, is aware of this, but it's been our ongoing goal since March of 2020 to provide the highest level of accountability possible around these public dollars. That's critical to our members being auditors, state auditors, controllers, and treasurers. You know, at times it's been a struggle. I think all of us would agree with that, but the need for communication and collaboration and coordination between federal, state, and local governments has never been greater. You know, it was our experience with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or ARA. If it taught us anything, it was that frequent communication and consistent communication was the key to success. And we've stressed that this go around with the pandemic, that state and local governments are partners in this overall effort. And we've encouraged a variety of different groups, including the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee, or PRAC, all of the federal grantor agencies, the federal inspectors general, the Government Accountability Office, to see us as partners and to use us as partners. You know, NASCAC members, as well as many of you, we know our state governments well, including those agencies and programs that historically have presented highest levels of risk. So the boots on the ground, if you will, are really at the state and local level. And using our experience and expertise, we've tried to convey to the federal government that we need to be used and be at the table to minimize the misuse of public funds. ARA, as I mentioned earlier, provided a very good roadmap on how all levels of government can collaborate in time of crisis. And I think we've all stepped up during this crisis. NASCAC's been involved with communicating and cooperating and coordinating a number of efforts to, again, provide accountability over these public dollars, slightly over $5 trillion to this point. So with that, I will just look, if you will, just look at the slide. These are a few things that we've been doing both at a federal and local level. We've been trying to include everybody that's involved, all stakeholders. So we've been working with the Government Accountability Office, or GAO. We conduct monthly meetings. We started those as early as May of 2020 with all of the auditors, federal, state, local, as well as CPA firms, to discuss issues of common interest. Hey, what are you seeing out there? What needs to be addressed? What needs to be identified as high risk? We generally hold those on a Wednesday of each month. And then we follow that up with the what we call the PRAC listening post. And the PRAC, of course, is the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. The listening post is really a smaller group. We hold these meetings on Fridays, really high-level key decision makers, where we build upon what we learned Wednesday with what we call our big group, and really dive into determining and developing solutions. And then lastly, we just started for the investigators and trying to hit the fraud aspects, the PRAC state and local government investigative briefings. We had one of those last fall. We're doing these each quarter, and we just had one last week. So again, the focus there is on investigations and fraud. What should you be looking for? What are those red flags? And we've been very lucky to have key representatives from the federal grantor agencies involved in that. Here are some of the remaining issues. You know, we're almost 2 years into this, but all the issues are still not resolved. Painfully, most of you on this call are aware of that. But here's one we are really, really concerned about, and that's auditor capacity. You know, with the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, non-entitlement units of government were getting funds, you know, as direct recipients. And we're talking about some pretty small units of local government. I think technically those with population less than 50,000, more or less. Some of these entities have not gotten this type of money before. They're not used to getting single audits. And there are a lot of them. I don't think anybody has a full grasp on the total number, but I did hear today, you know, somewhere between 10 to 15 to 20,000. This is coming at a time when the audit community, as well as the grant management community, is already pretty well stressed. So we are really concerned about the auditor capacity issue. In fact, we've been working with Treasury as well as OMB. We had a meeting today. And the question is really, do these small units of government that are going to get these funds one time, spend them, and they're done, really need a full-blown single audit? We think the answer is no, but there should be some level of accountability. So that's really what we're working on to balance that set of criteria. We want accountability, but we don't want to have extreme burden. So that's one thing. The other thing we're working on is just continuing to get timely guidance from the federal agencies. For us at the state accountability level, the OMB compliance supplement is just critical. And it's been coming out very, very late. In fact, we just got the last addendum 2 to the compliance supplement in January for 2021 single audits. And by the way, those are due in March. So we got the last set of rules in January, and the audits under the normal timelines are due in March. So we're continuing to work with all the federal grantor agencies, OMB and others, to try to get to us very timely guidance. If you'll go to the next slide. So just a few other things, Janelle, that we are really keeping an eye on in 2022. Obviously, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, passed. As we know, that's more money. I think around $1.1 trillion. More money means more accountability. Will there be new federal programs, or will the dollars flow to existing programs? These things matter to the auditors, the controllers, and the treasurers. And what will be the implementation issues around IIJA? Obviously, there's going to be some. We're also really keeping a close eye on the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. This is where we file all of our single audits. And the Census Bureau has been doing that work for many, many years. They're no longer going to host the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. There'll have to be a new host. We don't know who that's going to be yet. So we're really keeping an eye on that. The GREAT Act. A lot of us have forgotten about the GREAT Act. It was signed by the president in December of 2019. It involves standardization of data. And where is it? What's the status? Because of the COVID pandemic, we haven't really been kept up to date on the GREAT Act, but we know it's coming. And so we're keeping a close eye on that. ESG, also a hot button issue, very controversial in some regards. But really, the key issues here are what disclosures are appropriate for investors, and what is the appropriate role for the accounting standard setters, in our case, the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Setting Board. And then lastly, I just mentioned the Great Resignation. I suspect many of the groups on the call today are going to have this as a concern. We're seeing staff leave at a time when the workload and the demands are at all-time highs. So it's really kind of the perfect storm. Janelle, I'm going to wrap up there. Next slide, if you would, Tammy, and that just provides my contact information. Anybody out there that needs to reach out to me about accountability issues over the COVID funds, please either email me or give me a call. Love to hear from you. That's a quick rundown, Janelle, of some of our top priorities in 2022.
A quick and great rundown. You make audit and financial accountability sound very, very exciting. Fun fact, Kenny, my first job in government was actually as the head of stimulus programming and fund for Chicago Public Schools. So I appreciate the work that y'all do and the accountability that is necessary. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who are watching, of course, make sure that you reach out and contact as appropriate. Thank you, Kenny. Yep. Now we're going to keep with our financial theme, and I'm going to turn to Shelby Kearns from the National Association of State Budget Officers, or NASPO. So Shelby, I know that your team's been watching state budget forecasts and that you released a financial survey, if I'm not mistaken, last fall. And so I will maybe start it off by asking you, what are you seeing as some of the key themes and priorities for state budget officers? Shelby?
Thank you. Thanks, Janelle. Thanks, Pam. Just really quickly, also want to start out by saying how much we appreciate the partnership that we have with NASCA and all the state associations that are here today. I think we always partner really well, but we've become extremely close and really had to rely on each other over the past 2 years. What we're seeing from states with revenue, their revenue forecasts, their revenue collections is that they're performing much better than we ever would have imagined. When we entered the pandemic 2 years ago, we were all very scared about the future of budget conditions, and things looked really dire in the beginning. And I'm happy to say that none of those really dire predictions have come to pass. So we're seeing states over the last 2 years have actually outperformed their pre-COVID forecasts. So state finances are strong. We have challenges still, of course, there's a lot of demands on the expenditure side that come from living through a pandemic, but conditions are strong. And our top priority here at NASPO is helping state budget officers navigate all of those opportunities and the challenges that come from the current budget conditions. I think the top thing that we talk about, our top priority is really managing those unprecedented amounts of federal funds that are flowing to states. I feel like I'm going to echo Kenny a little bit, but of course we have a lot of the same priorities there. A lot of what we're talking about are a lot of discussions around best practices, around innovative uses of these dollars, about ways to maximize funds. Kind of the term we always talk about use is blending and braiding the funds to make sure we get the best bang for the buck. How to make strategic one-time investments to avoid a fiscal cliff when those one-time surplus revenues from beating revenue forecasts and federal funds go away. Nobody wants to then have to turn around and cut budgets because they grew unsustainably. So we talk a lot about those issues. Getting our members in a room to share those experiences and best practices is really important. We're talking a lot more about compliance and reporting issues than I think we ever have before. State budget offices and governor's offices typically are not as intimately involved in managing these funds and programs and giving grants and doing a lot of the things we've seen during the pandemic. So we're talking a lot about audit trails and things we've not discussed as much before. NASCA is acting as a liaison to the federal government as well. We're working on some of the same things that Kenny mentioned, trying to get clarity around guidance, trying to get really clear instructions about what's allowable and not allowable, and about what we're going to need to hold on to in a lot of those reporting and compliance issues. So working really closely with our federal partners as well, and helping keep our members informed about what's happening at the federal level. So we do weekly communications. We have a Washington report that goes out that talks about any federal actions that have to do with the pandemic, with federal funding, anything that impacts states. We try to summarize that, get it out every week to make sure that our members stay informed. We also have a Health Matters publication that goes out each week that, again, more focused on health, budgets, and Medicaid issues that are coming out. But both of those are really our way of letting our members know what's happening here in DC. And Janelle mentioned our fiscal survey of the states that came out recently. Another top priority for us, as always, is disseminating information on state budgets. We have our regular reports that come out. We do a fiscal survey of the states twice a year and our state expenditure report once a year. And those are, of course, even more, I think, important right now. People are trying to understand state budget conditions and what's happening, and we're seeing a lot more interest in that. So we're really focused on those. We're also trying to get our information out a little bit more timely. So we've always put out summaries of state of the state addresses and governor's proposed budgets, and we usually collect all those and summarize them and put it out in all together in a publication. And we've been releasing those on a rolling basis as budgets are released and as the state of the state addresses are given by governors. Just again, because we've seen such a heightened need for information, and we want to make sure people can get that information as quickly as possible. So you can watch our website, watch us, watch on Twitter, LinkedIn, all of those places. We're really pushing that information out to make sure that you have the best information possible. I know sometimes it's good to be able to look at other states as well and get ideas and see what's happening. And sometimes, quite frankly, it just makes us all feel like we're less alone. So that helps. And we're also just expanding our educational information. So you'll see more blogs and issue briefs coming out on state budget conditions to help states, help policymakers, help those that are interested, just have a better idea about what's happening and what states are facing. We're also increasing our training and educational offerings because, again, there's so much happening. So we're convening our federal funds contacts and other groups of budget analysts to come together and talk about the issues of the day and the things that are important. And again, just share those innovative ideas and best practices and things that states are doing that can then be replicated somewhere else. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mentioned what Kenny mentioned with the Great Resignation. State budget offices have not been immune to that. They are facing huge recruitment and retention issues. So we're helping with training and education that's been created. Both the turnovers created a need for that, and I think we all have less attention to devote to bringing our new staff up to speed. So we're going to try to fill that void a little bit with more training and education. We're also putting together some recruitment tools, like a video about what does a budget office mean? What is it really like to work in a budget office, and things to help maybe spur some recruitment as well. Those are really top issues that I know budget offices are facing, and then that states are facing. So we're watching those issues very closely. So I'll go ahead and wrap up there. Again, just want to say how much we really appreciate our partnership with our state associations. And I know that when I was in the Idaho budget office, I worked hand in hand very, very closely with your counterpart there. There's so much overlap, and what you guys do really keeps your states, keeps the lights on and keeps things moving. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you for all that you do. And one other thing, I'm going to make a shameless plug. We love to leverage context, and you all, NASPO puts a lot of really good information out online. And so if you all have not checked it out, definitely do so. But thank you again, Shelby, for your report out. We are going to shift gears just a bit to technology. So we're going to have the National Association of State Chief Administrators, or NASCO, come up next. At the end of 2021, NASCO released an upcoming priorities report. When top of the list should be probably of no surprise to anyone watching today, cybersecurity, digital government, and broadband. And so another interesting component is obviously around workforce, and Shelby just talked a little bit about that, and I think we'll see that as a recurring theme in today's conversation. And so I am really excited to have Doug Robinson from NASCO talk a bit about, or expand on, some of NASCO's priorities and some of the initiatives that they have ahead. Doug?
Janelle, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I thank all the NASCO members for attending today and listening to kind of the roundup of all their partner state associations. Just a quick preamble: if there's nothing else that you know from the COVID-19 pandemic over the last couple of years, is the recognition that information technology has played a vital role. And that's certainly what our CIOs have seen, is that we have talked for many, many years about technology being part of the fabric of government from a standpoint of improvement and efficiency. And it definitely was on display and highlighted. And now I think it's become more transformational than ever. And we're not going to go back, I think, to the old ways of doing business. And so technology is going to begin to support us. So I'm going to be very quick because we actually have an articulated set of priorities. And so Tam, if you could bring up that slide, I'll provide a little bit of context on this. I am concluding my 18th year at NASCO as executive director. Mr. Pointer and I are part of the old guard. It's very unusual for association executive directors to serve in the capacity, but I think we both love what we do and have a passion for this. In my case, it's state information technology and everything that is involved in that. We're also fortunate that 16 years ago, I began a top 10 survey. So we do a forced choice ballot electronically to all of our members. Those are the state CIOs, the principals. And each year, then we ask them to forecast or kind of at least postulate what they're going to see in the upcoming year. And again, we've got a tremendous response rate with this every year, and we have this longitudinal data, which we've captured now for 16 years. We can go back and look at the trends and the movement of all these parties. And for 2022, we did this survey in late 2021. We had 49 state CIOs respond to it, a remarkable response rate. And we're able to take their priorities, put them in the NASCO blender, and come out with the aggregate view of those top 10. And we have this each year. So it's probably the singular most important piece of work we do for the marketplace, and it's one page. So again, I invite you to kind of look at this, and I'll walk you through a couple of the highlights, and that will give you the state CEO priorities. And it's not surprising that cybersecurity and risk management is number one, 9th consecutive year. This is all about risk management, and cybersecurity is really a business risk to the continuity of government. So it's out of the technology domain. Not completely, but certainly should be thought upon by all of our association members across the board about how critical that is to reducing risk in state state government. Digital government, digital services is on the list for many years, has moved up to strong #2 position and influenced really particularly by the pandemic response. Citizens did not have a good customer experience. Their CX was not very strong during the pandemic, and many of the programs that were not online were vital to citizens, and they were unable to basically conduct business with the state. So I think this is the future, is more digital services. Janelle mentioned broadband, over $65 billion in federal grants, plus an additional several billion that the states are going to invest. Again, another example of the impact of the pandemic is around what's going on with broadband expansion. Cloud services, again, on the list, top 3. This is the major force of change if you look at the future of X as a service, or where states are going, which is more of the moving to the broker or CIO as broker model, and really abandoning the old owner operator model, which was the last 4 decades of state IT, where the state owned and operated all their technology on premise in the Capitol campus. That's not the direction of the future, and certainly a lot more about that. Legacy modernization, the same. Impact of the pandemic exposed the need for application modernization. We saw all of the headline news about systems and platforms that were failing, that couldn't scale, that can't be flexible to meet the expansive needs of, again, millions of additional citizen users that were not used to dealing with state government in a digital format. And again, supported by the need for more cloud services to be scalable and flexible. I'll point out a couple of other here. Identity and access management for the first time on the list, because they connect the dots between cybersecurity and digital services and the need to modernize. That is probably going to be the #1 investment for our states from a cybersecurity perspective, is identity and access management, along with what's called the zero trust adoption of a zero trust framework. So you'll hear that terminology really in the next couple of years from a lot of states. Workforce, very critical, a continuing party on and off the list, but again, because of the resignations, retirements, because of the lack of capabilities and skills in technical areas, particularly cybersecurity, that's a problem right there. So that is some of the things we're going to talk about in terms of the state agency view and the state CIO view. Data and information management, always critical. And then finally, consolidation and optimization. Interesting that this was #1 for many years, and as states become more mature, we see the fact that they're basically moving more into a consolidated or optimized environment. So again, less from the fragmented approach and siloed, and more into the optimization. I'm getting my tone that my time is up, so I'm going to go ahead and stop right there, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next speaker, and I'll go ahead and certainly take any questions that you have in the chat. So thank you, Janelle. It was a quick run through of our top 10 for 2022.
Well, thank you, Doug. And I have to just say congratulations on your 18 years of service. It is always exciting to have folks who have been part of the history in the context of helping us get from places from A to B. And I hope, and I'm sure that your career, and especially in the last few years, has been the importance of information technology and services has been a highlight. And so thank you for the service to us and to NASCA. All right, so switching gears just a bit, excuse me 1 second. All right, so Mike is up next, and one of the aspects that obviously we've all been dealing with during the pandemic has been a major shift in the workplace. And CAOs, like many folks on the call, or folks who work adjacent to the CAO space, have really had to continue to evolve the physical office space. I know we have in Illinois. And so as many states are looking to long-term to this idea of what does remote or hybrid work and workspaces look like, at NASFA, we're really excited to hear from Mike Harvey a little bit more around what the priorities are and what are some of the current issues facing facilities administrators. Mike?
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon as well. Thank you very much, Janelle. I really appreciate that introduction. I do want to qualify, I serve as the director of the Support Services Bureau, not the actual Department of Transportation, Iowa DOT, but part of the Iowa DOT. I am the former president of NASFA. I was very fortunate to have the rare opportunity to serve 2 continuous terms as the president due to the pandemic. And Janelle, if I had a crystal ball to be able to answer your questions that you let in with in terms of the office space and the long term, I'd be a very rich person and not here. But that is one of our challenges, really looking at that and looking at those challenges. But before I jump into that, I again want to say thank you very much. I'm humbled and honored to be able to represent NASFA here on the panel today with the other individuals. NASFA is the Association of State Facility Administrators. Many of your staff are part of NASFA. It may represent the Department of Transportation as I do. They also may oversee facilities such as the state parks, Capitol complexes, Department of Corrections, as well as a wide variety of other state facility entities. NASFA as a whole, we are the only association dedicated exclusively to the state facilities professional and the unique challenges that they face. Our mission, NASFA is a professional organization whose mission is fostering communication and providing leadership in the development and implementation of state facility administration practices. So, Janelle, as you talked about that, that really has challenged us and the real elephant in the room here, and I'll take a little bit different twist. A lot of the same challenges that have been shared so far are impacting us, but I'll look at those in a little bit differently. And of course, the elephant in the room was the pandemic that started in early of 2020. It really just upset our world. We shut down our facilities, we sent our employees home, but at the same time, we had to continue to maintain our facilities and keep those staff that had to be here for the essential functions, be able to provide them with a safe and effective operational work environment that they could work in and hopefully be able to continue to do their work with as little interruptions as possible. As you might imagine, our staff, the Department of Transportation, trying to issue driver's licenses when someone that they don't even know is coming sitting right across from them. Also having to go on a drive test for either CDL or a regular driver's license with somebody that they don't know, having to get in their vehicle and go for that ride. And our challenges were to try to figure out ways to keep them safe in that environment and also keep the testee safe as well in that environment. So it was very, very challenging, and it continues to be an ever-changing environment as we look to the future of what is our workplace going to be. Many of you are looking at downsizing your staffing environments because of the teleworking possibilities. And I'll go back to Doug. He talked about the technology and looking at this coming to the future. We probably couldn't have been able to do this, even 5 or 10 years ago, and definitely 15, 20 years ago, we would not have been able to send everybody home and have them continue to do their work, in some cases better in a remote location than they were able to do in their office location. One other thing back to Doug is I am very pleased to see the cybersecurity initiative on there and the prioritization of that, having a student or a son in college studying that exact thing. So good to know that he'll have a job in the future. Our group of NASFA professionals met a few weeks ago to talk about our list that we wanted to share with all of you. And so I just want to kind of go through that. We were able to kind of put them together in a couple little buckets. The first one, Doug touched on this one as well, is workforce and employees. Very, very important. Obviously, we cannot do what we do without our employees, but we need to, the first item, strategic workforce planning. We really need to be thinking about how we approach our work and what it is that we need to have in the future. And that takes many different appearances depending on the lens that you're looking through and the role and responsibilities that you have. But strategic workforce planning is very critical to all of us. With that comes recruitment and retaining our staff. Obviously, we have to recruit the best and the brightest individuals that we can. And in the shrinking job force environment that we're in right now, that becomes even harder. So we need to be very clear in our advertising and our recruitment messages, do as much as we can to talk about the quality of work that we have, our benefits that we have, our work-life balances that we have, and the opportunities that those individuals will have. And that leads me to the folks that that are going to be retiring. What sort of opportunities are these new individuals going to have within our organizations as we lose all of those staff walking out the door with immense years of knowledge and experience? And so how do we be able to create that environment where we can tap into that and be able to get that information? Of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think someone else talked about that earlier too. That is very important for us to make sure that our workforce looks like the customers that we're serving, and it looks like society in general. So diversity, equity, inclusion is very important for us. We need to keep that on the forefront of what it is we're doing as we're looking at our workforces. Employee engagement and experience, engagement of our employees, study after study after study talks about how important engagement is for our employees, and we can't emphasize that enough. And of course, training and certification, making sure we're giving them opportunities to grow within their jobs and also giving them opportunities to advance within the organization, as I mentioned earlier, through those training opportunities. The next one, process and data. Very, very important for us to look at continuous process improvement, whether it's in our facilities or any aspect of what we're doing. We talked about earlier all the funds that are coming in, and all of our staff are struggling with that as well. Great problem to have, but it is definitely a challenge. So looking at our processes and how do we improve those, whether it's project delivery or any other aspect that we're doing. Data management, data-driven decision-making. What we do may not on the surface appear to be real data-driven, but it really is, especially in terms of our budgeting, looking at the supply chain issues and the ever-increasing material supplies, whether it was wood back a year ago. Steel prices continue to be a challenge, delivery. We led a recent project and 10 months out just to have the precast delivered. So those sorts of scheduling challenges continue to be very important for us looking at our data management processes. And of course, general process improvement, both improving the process and eliminating the red tape. That continues to be a challenge for all of us as we're looking at our work. More specifically, kind of the next bucket here is facilities, workspaces and built spaces, optimization and reduction. Again, we touched on that earlier with Janelle's comments. It's going to be a challenge for all of us as we work with all of you to be able to provide you with the optimal spaces. Enough space, but not too much space as we look to the hybrid environment that we're in right now. As we welcome employees back, are they going to continue to stay as teleworkers? Are they going to come in and need hoteling spaces, collaboration spaces? We just took a tour of several businesses on Monday with our organization here and our leadership, looking at the new or modern workforce areas. And as we wandered around, there's people on Teams calls, Zoom calls, and we couldn't even tell they're on a call until you were standing right there or even possibly looking at their screen. So there's ways for us to be innovative in the design of our spaces and be thoughtful and creative in how we build those out, and also be able to build for the future. The staff that we have today that are going to be retiring in the next 5 or 10 years are not the staff that we're hiring today, and definitely not the staff that we're going to have in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So making sure that we have adaptable spaces that can accommodate those needs. And real quickly here, I'll try to wrap up, but managing and eliminating deferred maintenance, that's a huge thing for us. Looking at that ever large dollar numbers out there in terms of deferred maintenance. Terrible thing that we need to look at and pay attention to and get on top of and in front of. Evaluating our facilities, that again touches on the deferred maintenance, making sure that we're looking at the issues based on total cost of ownership. What is that total cost, including the deferred maintenance that may happen over the 25, 50, 75, or even 100 years of life of that facility. Climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience, again with climate change. And the severe weather, the storms. I know one of our colleagues in Louisiana talked about the hurricanes and the amount of work that they're having to deal with in terms of trying to come back from those. But of course, the fires, the droughts, the severe ice and snowstorms, derechos here in Iowa that we've had 2 in the last 2 years. Those are ever increasing natural events that we have to deal with. Again, resilience and adaptation for climate change and the changing workplace, making sure that we're dealing with that. And of course, sustainability. I'll end with that. We need to make sure that we're building and designing facilities that are sustainable for the long term. That touches on a lot of those other things. Are they sustainable from an occupancy and from an operational standpoint, but they're also sustainable from a building standpoint too. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to my NASFA peers that allowed me to represent them here today. I know some of them are on the call, so I thank them for joining, and also everyone else for joining us today. Appreciative of the fellow panel members, and of course, appreciative to our hosts and Janelle for having me here. Thank you, everyone.
Mike, thank you for reporting out for NASFA. You may not have a crystal ball, but your insights have been really instructive. And you've actually helped me, right? Because you you hit a lot of different important buckets, but some of the core themes that kept coming up for me were really around people, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's our customers or it's our clients or it's our employees who do different kinds of work. 30% of my workforce was coming in the office 24/7, 365. The rest of us had the ability to work remotely or in a hybrid capacity, really helping our colleagues, our peers be thinking and be thoughtful about what the implications are for our facilities and our built environment and how we engage with people, our constituents, our employees, our labor unions, all of the trade, everybody is so particularly helpful. And so you helped me transition and to pull a thread on one of the themes for today, which is really about people. And so I'm going to transition to Leslie. Again, she'll talk a little bit more about the people, capital P, as I say at CMS. And she is from the National Association of State Personnel Executives, NASCA. And she's also been a collaborator of CMS and NASCA. And so I want to thank her for that as always. So Leslie, I'll tee you up with, clearly you are well aware that our personnel executives are working diligently to maintain an effective, I would say safe workplace with a strong culture and a very new workplace context, right? Mike talked a lot about some of the different challenges and opportunities that we have right now as a function of the pandemic and some other macro conditions. So I would love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear a little bit more about NASB and what do you all see as some of the key issues and opportunities for our states? Leslie?
Thanks, Janelle, and thanks, Pam and the NASCA team for allowing me to join you today. Certainly, COVID has had, the pandemic has had a huge effect on the workforce, but also lots of opportunities for change and innovation. So one of the things I wanted to share are, I guess, the three buckets that I feel our members have been dealing with over the past couple of years. And the first bucket is very policy oriented, very much I call it managing COVID, the leave management, the temporary to permanent telework policies, standing up systems for proof of vaccination, employee mental health, and maintaining safe workspaces. And that initially was taking a great deal of time for our members. And as that's not as much of taking as much time anymore. So, then there's bucket two, which are what I call the areas of challenge exacerbated by the pandemic. And that's certainly staffing in hard to fill positions and hard to retain positions, particularly in the 24/7 facilities, direct care positions such as nurses, nursing assistants, corrections officers, social workers, state troopers. And I know some of you will also have your challenges, particularly in IT as well. But I think, just the public safety and well-being matters of these particularly 24/7 organizations are at utmost importance and at the forefront on the day-to-day work of a lot of our membership. So, for example, there are states that have 50% vacancy rates for corrections officers. And frankly, the corrections officers can go to the car wash down the road and make more money than they're making as a corrections officer. So really taking a look at some of those compensation issues. And I know some states have National Guard staffing correctional facilities as well as healthcare facilities. A lot of states are contracting out for nurses. And I think what we've found also, a lot of our members have found, particularly in more decentralized environments, they didn't realize how how many agencies were contracting out employees prior to COVID and are contracting out now. So I think those are huge issues. And then taking a look at, are these hiring and retention bonuses really working? There's a state where you can get a $20,000 hiring bonus to be a state trooper. And so, really, is this, are these funds working in the long term? Are they just getting them through a few months or a year as far as retention? So those are the things we're looking at for those critical, hard to fill positions. And then also, I think that takes us to the next bucket, and that is the future of work, and being able to take a deep breath and look forward to those next to the next steps, and creating an environment that where people want to work, and you make being able to work there accessible. So one of the things that, let me step back a minute, and that I think the public sector in general has a great opportunity for improvement and innovation in a lot of these areas. So in the future of work, we are working with our, not only our HR directors and deputy directors, but all of our subject matter experts, whether they're in classification and compensation, or talent acquisition, or training and development, those types of groups, to really look at their particular areas that help the state or any organization be an employer of choice. So first and foremost is talent acquisition and retention. We are working with a lot of our states are talking about, of course, lessening the time to hire, and a lot more are making on the spot job offers if they can. And then some of them are working through issues where their civil service requirements require a job to be posted for a certain amount of time, but they're able to offer positions as a temporary position. And then as the employee is hired as a temporary or interim employee, work them through the actual full hiring process to become a permanent employee. So those are some of the things we're talking about and sharing with our states, shortening the application. Missouri, in fact, shortened its actual application by 30%. And so, there are things you can do, reviewing minimum qualifications. Do you really need a degree? Do you really need 3 years experience? And also, just increasing opportunities to share more information about jobs, and whether that's going to job fairs, expanding where you're expanding the recruitment area, and just really trying to include a more diverse applicant pool. And then employer branding is part of that as well. So we are working with our members to help them create more of a statewide brand as an employer, rather than an agency by agency brand, which is also helpful. I think compensation is another issue. Most states, if they haven't done a class and comp study, they're in the process of doing a class and comp study or getting ready to do one. And I think we all know that compensation in the public sector is challenged at best. And while it'll never compete with the private sector, at least trying to be a little more competitive and really understanding your competition. Typically that's one of the things that we work is to educate about your competition isn't another state for an employee. Typically it's another employer within the state. So maintaining market rates, and then working on the culture. And so obviously the culture of an organization, you can, once you get them hired, you got to keep them. And the opportunity for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Most states either have a program housed within their HR division, or sometimes it's the governor's office that's running more of a statewide effort that includes state employment as that. Employee engagement initiatives also are on the forefront for our members, as well as frontline supervisor training. And then also generational differences. Really, millennials are who is going to be leading. If they're not leading now, they're going to be, and really developing millennials to lead. And finally, just workforce planning, obviously, thinking about future talent needs and developing a talent pipeline. But of course, that's a challenge when you're getting in there, when you're doing that. So again, we're just helping our members try to prioritize those and what they're doing well, some of their weaknesses. But Janelle, I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm just trying to catch up in the chat, so I will take a moment to do a shameless plug for NASP, because Leslie, I don't know if you remember this, 2019, after my first NASCA, I had just started at the state, but after my first NASCA conference, I connected with NASP. You may not even remember this. You guys were so instructive because I was blowing you up. You were so instructive in helping us with our class and comp study. The surveys that you guys did during COVID that we used to benchmark ourselves and to, quite frankly, leverage some of the best practices happening across other states. And a lot of workplace retention and branding work we've also leveraged significantly from NASP. If you're not on their distribution list, you're missing out, I'm just saying. So to that end, I'm going to say thank you to Leslie and to NASP, but I will also mention that in the chat, and I'm just catching up, and someone said Be Well, and Be Well Illinois is our comprehensive wellness program. If you want to learn more, I'm always happy to share. I'll put a link in there in a little bit. But there are links to all of our respective organizations and our partners here today. And so again, I will strongly encourage you, even if you don't think that you need to hear about fill in the blank, share it with a colleague, share it with a peer. So many of these organizations have been so incredibly helpful to different parts of my organization, and therefore to the governor and his administration. I would just really encourage you all to copy and paste some of these links. I'm sure we'll probably have it on the NASCA website as well, but just wanted to mention that they are in the chat. So thank you, Pam and team, for putting that in there. All right, I think we are getting closer to the end. So thank you, Leslie. We are shifting gears again to another topic. I'm not as good at this one, but it is a favorite of mine to talk and learn more about, which is procurement. Like many of you, we already know procurement was important to us. They were our unsung heroes, like many of us on the call say. We do all the work behind the scenes to make things happen. But I think, during COVID in particular, our procurement professionals were able to be the work that they do, which is viewed very differently. And so I'm excited to have our colleague here, Daniel, to talk a little bit more about the National Association of State Procurement Officers, so NASPO. And like NASPO really focuses a lot around their priority areas have also focused a lot around, process improvement and system redesign. And so I will turn it over to Daniel to talk a little bit more about NASPO and their various priorities. Daniel?
Perfect. Thank you, Janelle. And of course, thank you, NASCA, for hosting this webinar. Looking forward to it because this is my first time hosting a webinar, being a part of a webinar with NASCA as the new Director of Strategic Partnerships for NASPO. I believe Tammy will share the top 10 priorities that we'll cover here in a second. But first, I just wanted to start off by saying, this is NASPO's 75th anniversary this year, and we're just excited to continue celebrating and recognizing the important work our state procurement officials do on a daily basis. And in NASPO's 75th year, we continue our mission to promote government excellence by delivering superior procurement solutions for the benefit of the public. On your screen, you'll see that the 2022 top 10 priorities, which are actually created from a survey that is completed by NASPO primary members. So this is something that we'll be working on throughout the year, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot of, but we definitely are looking for ways to connect with our partners and collaborating a little bit more on these priorities that overlap. What I'll do is I'll quickly go through each one just to give you a quick overview of what we're doing with each of these priorities, and then be happy to take questions later on. The first one is customer service to agency stakeholders, which is usually on the list and one of the most important things. So of course, our procurement officers want to continue to meet the needs of agency stakeholders and provide and receive high satisfaction rates. The second one is Central Procurement Office as a strategic leader. So active participation in policy setting and state planning, centralized data gathering and analysis to improve procurement within their state. So this is something that you'll see happening this year as well. Number three, continuous process improvement, which is something that is usually happening in most organizations. You're continuously looking at your process and how you can improve them. So using and developing resources that will continue to improve the procurement process. Number 4 is e-procurement, which has become a pretty big topic over the last several years. Continued system creation, adoption, and utilization, basically improving the speed and efficiency of procurement. And then there's number 5, which is training and certification, which is a huge topic as well. NASPO continues our commitment to develop and share high quality public procurement, professional development, and education. And one example of this is, we just released this and there's been some emails sent out and it's been over LinkedIn and on our website. But our procurement U team, which is an amazing team, is now offering over 60 hours of NASPO developed courses free of charge to procurement professionals. So it really helps with those professionals who are seeking to learn more about the procurement profession, maybe get their hours for certification, or who are working towards their certification. So a great opportunity for those who are either in public procurement or looking to get into public procurement. Number 6 is talent management and succession planning, which, as I've heard from all of our other partners on the call, is a common theme. And I will say, as our partners our members are out there recruiting and working to find the next generation of public procurement officials. We have a great team here at NASPO in our academic affairs manager team and membership team that continues to work with our student membership and academic partners to create internships. We have a strong internship program, promote opportunities to industry, attend career fairs, and so forth to really promote the industry and to help that younger generation realize what kind of career they can have in public procurement and the public sector. Number 7, analytics for data-driven decision-making. Analytics is a huge topic of conversation amongst several organizations as well, but making sure to really tap it into those analytics to improve procurement decisions across the state will be a focus. Number 8 is effective contract administration. So, continuing a standardized process, making sure contracts are effectively monitored, as well as reviewing supplier performance. Number 9 is promoting supplier diversity. So these are just strategies to create opportunities for small businesses and women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses to participate in state contracting. And that's very important to us. So that's why we host events like NASPO Exchange, which helps businesses and suppliers learn about state procurement, how they can connect to state procurement and just participate in all together. And that's actually coming up April 12th through the 14th. So very soon we'll be hosting that event down in Orlando. And then number 10, of course, is tracking performance metrics to achieve procurement goals. And this will just overall help procurement officers look for aspects such as saving and cost avoidance, procurement function, and customer service, and see if they're hitting their goals throughout the year. So overall, that is our top 10, and those are our priorities for this year. So we're really excited to dive into 2022. And as the Director of Strategic Partnerships, I'm really excited to be working with all the partners on this call and to continue collaboration throughout the year. So Janelle, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, 75, happy 75th. It looks good on you. You don't look a day over something not 75. But in all seriousness, thank you for rounding out our report out of our strategic partners today. And I'm actually really excited that we have come to this part of our conversation. So I will remind everyone, like Pam mentioned earlier, if you've got questions, put it in the chat. We are going to try to keep really strictly to time. So first off, I will say, one, thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you so much for being partners, being so collaborative behind the scenes, and being so helpful and willing to share out your top priorities here today. I think one of the things that is abundantly clear, or should be clear, is there's a lot of overlap. And some people may say, well, why is there so much overlap? It's actually reinforcing, right? We come to these conversations with a lot of different areas of expertise, and to appreciate the fact that there are obviously intersections and spaces where we can further work together to be more effective and to be more efficient, I think is really helpful, especially since so many of us have so many other things going on. And then the other piece is, most of us we've heard today have explicitly stated, but I also know implicit in what we do is to really help government, in particular state government, be as effective as possible, be as efficient as possible. And one of the ways in which we do that is to collaborate. One of the ways we do that is to be part of associations. One of the ways we do that is to also be supporting our team members and our colleagues, and actually having some of our vendors and our partners be part of these conversations so that we can just all be smarter together. We can learn together. I've learned a lot through NASCA. and a lot through partnering online directly and offline with some of my colleagues who are here today and some of whom are not. And so I want to just encourage everyone to take information down, copy and paste, connect, go to our website, and consider being members if you're not. So lastly, we like to talk about one thing at CMS, and I would love to just have a one thing takeaway from our panelists. What would be the one thing, this is our panelists, this is rapid fire, really quick, that we can take away from today's discussion as a way to collaborate across our agencies and our departments for more increased positive, maybe also add effective outcomes? So Kenny, Shelby, Doug, Mike, Leslie, Daniel, this is you. What's your one thing?
Janelle, this is Shelby. I would say keep bringing your ideas forward and talking. Our state agencies are the same as our state associations. We all need each other, and bringing these great ideas forward helps us come to solutions.
Yeah, and Shelby, I'll go off that a little bit more. Just persistent communication. I think that's very important amongst these partnerships that are on this call. And I think having set times to go over what's happening in organizations throughout the year is really important to collaborating and getting positive outcomes from these partnerships.
From the technology side, I would say focus on business process transformation, business process re-engineering. Technology is not going to do us any good if we don't reform the archaic business processes and practices that we see in state government. So that would be my message. It's more about the people and the money than it is about the technology.
Hard to follow all those, but great answers. I'd say also ask lots of questions. Take the time to ask questions of your customers, of your peers, of your staff. Ask questions. What do they need? How do we do it better? And one thing in terms of succession planning, when you have a staff person that's going to retire or accept a new job, move on, promotion, ask them who they worked with. We all know what they did and generally how they do it, but we don't necessarily know who they work with. Ask them who they worked with and compile that list and get that Rolodex directory or the modern directory of that, so you know who to reach out to when you run into new unique problems or issues going forward after they've gone. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll just say one word: flexibility. Just be open to change.
I love that. I love that. Well, on that note, thank you all for being flexible and letting us run over just a few extra moments. I want to do my job. And again, thank you all for the participants and the panelists for joining us. I'm going to turn it over very expeditiously to Pam to close us out. Thank you to everyone again. Appreciate it.
Well, Janelle, thank you. You did an amazing job as always, and there's nothing more I could add to what you've already said about the collaboration and the need for partnership among all of our sister associations. So thank you to all of our panelists today. All the information is in chat. Please make sure you reach out to them, look at their websites, check out all of their top priorities that they all have listed there. Again, thank you to everyone for being here with us today. We appreciate you joining us. This will be posted to NASCA's Knowledge Center in the next couple of days in case you'd like to watch it again or share this with your colleagues. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our next event as we're looking at driving cost optimization and efficiency. So we will see you all soon, and thanks again for joining NASCA.